one of the really important things for us to orient ourselves in the process that we are engaging in is to understand what are our foundations, what are the things that are going to hold these conversations together. And so for those of you that have been involved in this process since the beginning, you'll know that we've had a few false starts, a few learnings along the way, and that's actually really important to where we've landed today, and who's in the room today, and why we're here, why we're in this space, and what it might look like moving forward. So from those learnings, what our team has put together are a set of principles for this Citizens Assembly based on what we heard in terms of feedback in our very first session, which for those of you that were here, you'll remember was in the council offices, and also what we observed and kind of critically looked at as a design team as well. So I'm just going to go through very quickly what those principles are, and then I'm going to get you up because
we want this to be interactive
move around
today.
A little bit. For those of you that can, you can stay.
And
Right there.
there's a couple of others.
1, 2, 3.
We'll move to you. So the first principle, and I think this is, if you think about a whare nui has multiple po, for those of you that have been in a whare nui, and the middle po is called the potoko manawa. Yeah, the potoko manawa is that, it's your heart post, it's the thing that holds up the centre of that whare, that everything converges around. And so what we heard loud and clear was that our po, toko manawa, our first principle needs to be about te mana o te tai rāwhiti. Yeah, it needs to be about the uniqueness, the power, the strength, the unique challenges, the unique opportunities, and the unique people. I can say that because I'm not from here, but the uniqueness of te tai rāwhiti and the mana that sits in this place. Yes, there will be similarities and connections to other things that are happening in other places, but how we do things here in te tai rāwhiti is unique and special to us. And there is a whole lot of expertise, a whole lot of knowledge, a whole lot of history that sits in this place. So koira te po tuatahi, that's our first po, that's the heart of why we're here, yeah, and why we want to make sure that your voices are part of that conversation, that it's not people from outside like myself coming and telling you what needs to happen in this rohe, in this space. The second po is te tiriti o Waitangi me ngā tikanga. So this is a really important one, and particularly important in the context, the political context that we exist in at the moment, but it has been important mai rānō forever, since 1840, 1835, and we're going to do some work on te tiriti shortly. But this is about recognising that te tiriti o Waitangi produces a particular kind of relationship, of partnership, of decision making, and of democracy that is unique to Aotearoa. Yeah. So when we talk about Citizens Assembly, when we talk about deliberative democracy, we're not necessarily talking about it as it might exist in other countries, in Europe and wherever, although we know ideas have come from there to here, but Te Tiriti o Waitangi is the foundational document that has created the particular kind of democracy that we have now. Whether we agree that it is the most appropriate and upholding of Te Tiriti or not, Te Tiriti o Waitangi is that foundation. And so when we're thinking in our kōrero today, and over the coming weeks, it's not should we think about Te Tiriti as part of this conversation? The principle is Te Tiriti o Waitangi is already, it always is part of the conversation, whether we have the language and tools to engage with it or not. So koira te pau tuarua. So te mana o te tai rāwhiti, the uniqueness of this place, Te Tiriti o Waitangi, and then the third po is about all of you. The first two are about all of you as well, which is that we are representing our community in all its diversity. We are diverse. Our community is diverse. We come with all kinds of experience. We come with all kinds of preconceived ideas. We come with all kinds of questions and challenges and opinions and personalities. Yeah, no mai te katoa. Right? This is a space to bring all of that in with respect to everybody else. But we want to, so the po is te whakakanohi te hapori, the seen face, to actually see that this is the face of our community. And we identified early on that there are some missing groups like our rangatahi that haven't actually been represented in this process. So that's a learning for us, it's a takeaway, it's an opportunity. You know, we look at spaces like this, how do we do better in the next iteration, yeah? So all of the diverse wonderfulness, that is the uniqueness of Te Tai Rāwhiti. The fourth piece of our whare is te mahi tahi, working together. Yeah, so in all of that diversity, how do we chart a pathway to actually work together respectfully, with love, with grace, with humility? How do we chart that pathway forward? So that's our principle, is actually, this is the whole work of the Citizens Assembly, is working together, is working across all of that diversity. It's not about one of us winning the conversation, right? This isn't a tau-tohe debate. This is about finding another way to work together. And I'll admit that's not always easy for all of us, yeah? And so let's lean into the discomfort of that. Let's lean into the discomfort of not knowing and being okay with that. Oh, I don't know anything about that. Kei te pai tēnā. That's why we're here. Someone else might know. You might learn something else. You might have another question you can ask. And there are a whole pool of resources and very clever people that we can bring in to support that. So mahi tahi, working together with humility, with respect, with aroha for each other and for this beautiful place called Te Tai Rāwhiti. And then there is a fifth po. This is really more for us, but I think it's important to share with you, and that is really about transparency and accountability in the process. Yeah. So this is about us understanding that we are transparent in the process, we're transparent in the decision making, that we regularly reflect on what is happening, that we, hold up the mirror to ourselves and really try and understand, okay, what could be done better? And you will, again, for those of you that have been here from the beginning, will have seen that dance, that misstep tango. Anyway, you will have seen that along the way. And so being really open about that is really important for us as well. So those are our 5 po. Te mano Te Tai Rāwhiti, we are unique, we live in a unique place, we have unique issues, and therefore we need unique solutions that come from our community. Te tiriti o waitangi and the foundational relationship that provides us, the diversity of our community and making sure that is represented. Testing my own ability to remember these. Mahi tahi, working together, humility, respect, aroha, and then accountability and transparency. Right, what we produce at the end of this is going out to the community. So we want to be confident that there has been a really robust process in carrying that out. Kapwai? So what I want to do now, have I got time?
Yes.
Okay. We're going to have a really great kōrero with one more food. I'm happy to have more kōrero as the day goes on. If you have questions, I can share my experience and perspective. There are Ani Mikaire's piece, I think, will speak to quite a lot of the questions that we have. But one of the things I just want to say before we move into morning tea, You'll note here in Moana Jackson's quote, he says the treaty. And you'll often hear people say the treaty, but you hear other people say te tiriti. And this is a really important piece of information, right? Te tiriti o Waitangi is the Māori version, it's the Māori document. And in Te Tiriti o Waitangi, there were guarantees to hapu for their rangatiratanga over their lands, waters, and everything else that sat underneath that, right? They were guaranteed rangatiratanga, and in return, they gave so rangatiratanga being kind of the power and authority, sovereignty, if you will, self-determination, right? And in return, they gave the crown kāwanatanga, which is governorship. They gave them the right to govern their people that were coming in and help manage whatever was happening with that. Yeah. So in the Māori version, that was at its very basic. Please do your own research on this. But at its very basic, that was the agreement. Yeah. The English version is not a translation of the Māori version. It does not marry together. You need to look at them as separate documents. The English version claimed sovereignty for the crown, which is very different from governorship or kāwanatanga. Yeah? They don't, and all the experts talk about this, those two documents are not translations of each other. So when you hear te tiriti, that is what we're talking about, exchange of rangatiratanga or affirmation of rangatiratanga in exchange for governorship, for kāwanatanga. When you hear the treaty, people are often not referring to a translation of the Māori version. Most of the signatories to Te Tiriti signed the Māori version. They only understood Te Reo Māori, right? What they were signing up to and agreeing was in Te Reo. 39 people signed the English version. Over 500 signed the Māori version. Yeah? And there's a whole lot of stuff around international law that if you've got an ambiguous contract where that falls for the Te Tiriti. Moana Jackson is referring to Te Tiriti here, even though he uses the words the treaty, just as a FYI in this. But I think it's really important for people to understand, and what has happened even more so because of that ambiguity, is the Crown has leaned heavily on the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi, which are principles that have been largely defined through the court system and by the Crown, because they haven't been willing to commit to Te Tiriti o Waitangi, because that effectively questions their sovereign power as well. So that's how we've ended up with the principles conversation, and people talk about the principles. So I think there's lots of learning for some of us around, okay, what are we referring to? Is it the same thing? If someone's talking about the treaty and I'm talking about Te Tiriti, are we actually having the same conversation? If someone's talking about the principles, are we having the same conversation? So we need to constantly interrogate and question, okay, what is my understanding? What am I drawing on? What's the spring of knowledge that I'm drawing on to be able to have this conversation? So Te Tiriti and the treaty, two separate documents, different, have very minimal relationship to each other actually, if you look at how they're translated. And again, there are whole courses, there's whole textbooks, there's whole lifelong journey learning about all of that. But just as in case you're wondering why the languaging shifts sometimes, why not?
Accent speech. So it was.
Right. Ka pai. I'm going to leave it there. I feel like morning tea is probably well deserved after launching our day with that kōrero. But please, if you have discomfort, if you have questions, if you have a fire in your puku, a fire in your belly, which many of us do when we're talking about this, share it, ask the questions, come and have a kōrero with the team, and looking forward to the rest of the day.
Yeah, so morning